Okay. How many people out there are fans of wrestling? How many wrestling fans? How many wrestling fans are in my audience? Yeah, I don't watch wrestling. I don't know really anything about wrestling. There's a lot of wrestling references in Elbaf that kind of go over my head for that reason. Even as far back as when we were introduced to Dory and Broggy at Little Garden, Dory and Broggy's names are based off of wrestlers. Like Ripley is Rhea Ripley. There you go. There's a couple of other ones. There are references to actual like Norse names like way back in the day. They're not all named after wrestlers, but a lot of them are. Goldberg is the name of a famous wrestler. And in the last chapter 1145, we find out the name of Goldberg's shield. Barry's dad! Oh, he came back for this video alone. And then he's off to the void once again. Okay. But anyway, yeah. Goldberg is the name of a famous wrestler, and the name of the shield, spoilers, is named Nash. Okay? And so I made a joke about Nashville, Tennessee in the review, but a lot of people were like, no, teching, it's named after Kevin Nash, the famous wrestler. In fact, I think Goldberg and Kevin Nash had a wrestling match at one point. Once again, don't know anything about this, okay? The only thing I know about wrestling is something involving The Undertaker back in the 90s with a guy named Mankind and something involving a Spanish announcer table. That's all I got, all right? So anyway, yeah, that's where the references come from there. Also, the fact that the nightmare creatures that Killingham is spawning are called MMAs, and immediately I was like, mixed martial artists? Like, no, that might have actually have been the pun. That was actually the joke that Oda was maybe going for there. I don't know. So, little bit of a story, little bit of backstory we have about Nash. We don't know that much about him. He's not really focused on in the chapter all that much. There's an opening scene where Goldberg and Sanji and Zoro are taking on this giant dinosaur called a Groggysaurus, as seen in Strong World. And the dinosaur is attacking them, and Goldberg is like, okay, Nash, you're up. And Nash is like, okay, and expands in size, like, ah! And then the dinosaur bites the shield, breaks all of its teeth, and then Zoro goes flying through the air as an epic slicer head of broccoli and cuts off the dinosaur's head. And then after the battle, Zoro is kind of questioning, like, what's up with this thing? What's up with the shield? I don't know what's happening here. Also, coincidentally, Zoro did not go to Whole Cake Island. So yes, while Big Mom was on Onigashima and she was utilizing her soul fruit there and summoning the homies and everything like that, like the broken umbrella and the sandals and everything, she was, creating her homies there at Onigashima. I don't know if Zoro really even encountered them all that much. Oh, no, he would have, because they were fighting on top of the roof. But Zoro is not as familiar with Big Mom's ability as, like, Sanji would be, or Luffy, or Nami, or Brook, or Chop, or anybody that actually went to Tato Land, R.I.P. Pedro, right? Okay. So, yeah, he knows that, like, all right, Big Mom was using a thundercloud, and her hat was a sword, and there was a giant fireball, but, like, Zoro was probably not sitting there like, oh, what is the nature of her abilities, really? What are these things, right? Okay. So he questions, like, what is this thing? What's going on here? And Goldberg explains very quickly, doesn't really give a great backstory, but he gives a brief backstory. So Goldberg explains, oh, well, the shield used to belong to my dad, my pa, and way back in the day, he and a bunch of other giants went to go fight Big Mom, and after they came back, the shield was animated. Okay, like, that's just how it is, right? Okay, and so that's the story. So there was a question there, exactly when did this occur? Because Goldberg and Loki and Road are all the same age, 63 years old. Coincidentally, was the same time when Big Mom was 5, when she was on Elbaf and Mother Caramel was there with the Lamb's house and everything. And then the Semla incident occurred, and Yorl died, and Big Mom ravaged that village. So I was like, was that the incident where that occurred? And I was a little bit confused by that, because Mother Caramel used the ability of the soul fruit back then to create Pandora. She took all the flames from the village and then coalesced them into a homie, Pandora. And, we see Pandora a couple of times in that flashback. Not sure if Pandora is Prometheus or if Pandora stuck around after Mother Caramel was killed and then Big Mom now has the soul fruit. Not really sure about that rule. But we know devil fruit abilities can certainly linger after death. So if that's the way you want to go with it, not that big of a deal. But a lot of other, another way of looking looking at this was like, hey, this might have not have been the incident where Nash was created, might have been another incident later where the Giants went to go battle Big Mom. And actually, there are a couple of options on when that could have occurred, because we're literally talking about a time period 63 years long, okay, where Big Mom is building up her pirate crew and eventually joins Rox's crew and is part of that for a while, and then separates from Rox's crew after God Valley, and then builds up Toto-Land after that and has a bunch of kids. So, you know, there's plenty of decades of opportunities for the Giants to fight against Big Mom, okay? So first and foremost, I remembered one particular scene I wanted to mention here, okay? So after Big Mom and Mother Caramel and everybody leave Elbaf and they establish the Lamb's house on that island, which the island had very similar geography to Whole Cake, so it's very possible that that island that the Lamb's house was moved to eventually, I mean, Big Mom would have left it with Streusen, but later maybe returned to that same location and then established Whole Cake there. So anyway, they have the birthday party for Lin Lin, her 6th birthday party. They have the semla cake. She starts eating it, and she's so happy. It's the best birthday she ever had in her life. And then she looks down and she sees that Mother Caramel and all the children from the Lamb's house are gone. Scraps of their clothing remain, and the table is devoured. But other than that, they're all gone. Oh, gee, I wonder what happened to them. The narrator stated that there were 2 other people there that day that got to witness exactly what went down, which was probably more than likely cannibalism, but 2 individuals, and they had very different reactions. The first was Streusen, who was a chef for a pirate crew, but then that pirate crew fell apart, and he ended up basically as like a homeless man just wandering the world. He ended up on that island at the time. Streusen witnessed what went down, and he was just laughing his ass off, and he approached Lin Lin, and he was like, oh, hey, you know, well, you could travel with me, and basically used her abilities, you know, to like further his own interests and everything like that, because Big Mom now had the Soul So fruit and all that stuff. And a question could be made, like, if Big Mom did not meet Streusen back then, would Big Mom have become a pirate? Would she have become like this evil individual that she is now? Because back then, you know, she really didn't want to do horrible things to people. She was really strong, and, you know, she hurt animals and she felt bad about it. And a Mother Caramel wasn't great either. I mean, she was planning on, you know, selling Big Mom over to Cypherpole to end up in the Marines. But it's an interesting what-if scenario. In fact, it's a what-if scenario that people have suggested that I make a video about before, like what if Big Mom would have ended up in the Marines, how that would have went. So let me know down below, and I might finally make that video talking about like that what if. But anyway, that was Streusen. The other individual that was there that day that witnessed what happened was a random giant that was just really, you know, good friends with Mother Caramel and just wanted to pop by every now and then. Mother Caramel could no longer live on Elbaf, considering that Yorl had died, you know, and that was one of the previous captains of the Giant Warrior Pirates, one of their national heroes and everything, so they just couldn't stay there anymore. So that was kind of the agreement they made. Instead of killing Lin Lin, they left the island. But, you know, there was still this one giant that was like, oh, let's go see what's up with Mother Caramel. I just want to check in and make sure everything's okay. He rolled up at the absolute worst possible time, right? He just rolls up to the island. Let's see what's up with Mother Caramel. Oh, good Lord! King of Elbaf. Oh, great King Harald. What was that? You know, he sees this horrible thing unfold. Cannibalism, and he immediately just like went pale with terror and turned and ran back to his ship and then sailed back to Elbaf and told them all about the horrors of Charlotte Lin Lin. Wouldn't it be crazy if that giant, that unnamed giant in the backstory, what if that was Goldberg's pa? What if that was his dad right there? I mean, he could have been. Like, there's no reason why he couldn't have been, right? I even went back and looked at the shields on the ship to see, like, do we see the shield? Like, that would actually be really cool. But you could say that was Goldberg's father, maybe. And it might have been, it might not have been, but it doesn't matter. The point is, that giant went back to Elbaf, told everybody about what happened, and there was a visceral hatred. Like, there already was, but now there's this really deeply ingrained hatred for Big Mom, all right? So Shortly after this is Stroyzen and Big Mom go off and form well, not the Big Mom pirates yet, but form a sort of pirate crew where they start terrorizing the people, and eventually she ends up on Rox's crew and all that. Stroyzen was also a member of Rox's crew. If you go back and look at the flashback, you can see Stroyzen way off into the corner. He was there as well. Oda remembered, and I like that he does that sometimes. Like, yeah, Stroyzen would have been there as well, so just by, connection, he would have also had to be a member of Rox's crew, and he was. So anyway, it could have happened at any point, really. It could have been immediately after that, where the Giants, after they heard what happened from that giant, they were like, we've had enough. We have to end her existence once and for all. For Yorl, for all the people that lives were killed that day. We gotta go, right? So they might have all utilized, because Mother Caramel's dead now. The only thing that maybe was protecting Big Mom was Mother Caramel's, like, vouching for her. Like, she is a child, she knows not. But now she's gone, and that giant purportedly saw Big Mom devour Mother Caramel. So, like, oh, okay, no, she's awful. She's a horrible person, right? So the Giants could have then all gotten together like a vigilante party and go off like a war band and go and try to kill Big Mom. That could have been the events that Goldberg was talking about there. Or something that could have happened way later, because the way that the narrator kind of talks about it is they hated Big Mom so much they didn't even really mention her name anymore. Like, even mentioning her name was like Voldemort, you know what I mean? It's just like, she who shall not be named, Charlotte Linley, oh, the devil, something like that. Not unlike the way that Loki, by the way, is referred to as like the accursed prince and all that jazz, right? Now, another option, which I think makes a little bit more sense, is Lola. We still don't know how all this went down with Lola. Loki hasn't even mentioned her yet, right? Okay. Probably going to pop up at some point during his backstory. This would have had to have occurred after Loki killed Harald and left Elbaf and went off and traveled the ocean. That would have been the only time that I think would have been feasible for, him and Lola to meet. And then there was the marriage proposal by Big Mom trying to hook up Loki and Lola and, have him into the family, so then the Giants could have come into vogue and everything like that. Now, finally, the Giants were allied with Toto-Land and everything. I think that's the only time that really even makes sense. Because we're learning a little bit more about Loki's backstory from the last chapter, about how when he was a kid, he fought rocks and everything. But that was like 38 years ago. That was well before Lola was even born yet. So we're not quite at that point. Remember, Giants live a lot longer, so therefore a lot more backstory, a lot more stuff to go into. There's like 60 years of Loki's life, okay? And by human standards, Loki's only like in his early 20s right now, right? Okay, so that's how that goes. So, there was an event, and it was mentioned that, like, it could have actually worked out there. Like, had Lola accepted the marriage proposal, her arranged marriage, and would have gotten married to Loki, it's not impossible that, like, okay, yeah, you might have killed Yorl, and you might have brought horrible ruin and damnation to Elbaf, this nation of proud warriors, but, like, all right, I guess this makes up for that. Now, there would have obviously been, like, I don't think Jarl would have ever forgiven Big Mom ever for anything, what happened to Jarl and all that stuff. But maybe that, like, that arranged marriage could have smoothed it over a little bit, maybe, possibly. That was the idea. But Lola did not like the idea of having an arranged marriage, and so she fled. She left the island. She's like, I don't want my husband to be decided for me. I want to decide for myself who I'm going to marry. So she left, and then Big Mom tried to pass off Chiffon as Lola because they were twins, but Loki immediately could tell this is not Lola, and so that pissed off the Giants even more. That made them even more angry. And so that occurred, and then, like, everything was even worse after that. So that's why Big Mom hates Lola and hates Chiffon just by proxy of the fact that Chiffon looks like Lola, right? So it couldn't have occurred a very long time ago for this to have happened. So it's possible. We don't know. Goldberg's dad, but we're getting back to Goldberg's father in a moment, because there's actually a theory. Somebody commented on a video. I'm going to mention this because I didn't even realize this, but oh man. So anyway, let's say that was the moment. Goldberg's father goes off to war with a bunch of other Giants to fight Big Mom. Now, if this was only like a few years ago, then oh my God, right? Like, Big Mom's entire like pirate crew empire, Toto-Land, that would have already have been established, and the Giants were kind of outnumbered, right? Now, maybe if they mobilized every single Giant in Elbaf and they just took a fleet to Toto-Land, well, that might have been a different story. But the way Goldberg was talking about this this was not just like that. It was something like a little smaller, like a few groups of giants were going to fight, right? Okay, and so they fought against Big Mom at Tatoland. Something happened. Big Mom used her soul abilities to animate this shield, and then they left and went back to Elbaf, and then that's how Goldberg got this shield. And with that being said, I'm going to read this comment right here that I got on the last video from Spot Metalhead, teching my friend, my guy, my fella. How could you be so oblivious? Nash was created with the soul of Goldberg's dad. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, no, that's so messed up, but yeah. That could totally happen. Goldberg's father went off to fight Big Mom. Could have been during the Lola incident. Could have been right after Mother Carmel died, or it could have been at any other point within the 6 decades in between. But at some point, they went off to fight. Big Mom used her powers, ripped out the soul of Goldberg's daddy, and threw it into a shield. And then the shield became a homie. And either the shield itself left or another giant picked it up and ran off with it and then got back to Elbaf and was like, all right, Goldberg, your dad couldn't make it, but here's his lucky shield. By the way, it has a face now and it can talk for some reason. Now, remember, the homies do not maintain the memories from when they were alive. They're effectively being reborn. It's like a form of like reincarnation kind of deal. There is one exception to this. The memories are still in there somewhere, because when Pudding was using her ability with the Memo no Mi, she used an ability called Flashback, and then so she activated it on the homies of the Seducing Woods as like everybody was trying to escape, and then using this ability, the homies were able to temporarily remember who they were in their past life, which is, by the way, I went back and saw that scene, existentially horrifying. Can you imagine all of a sudden, like, everything goes black as you die, basically, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's foggy for a while, and then you come back into consciousness, and you're a tree. You're like, oh no, I'm a tree, what's happening? I can't move. And that's actually on the better end of things. You know, reincarnating as a tree might actually not be too bad. We did tree facts, and there's actually a really bunch of trees you could get turned into. That's not too bad. What's worse is if you get turned into this thing. This animated pile of dirt, I suppose, whatever this thing's supposed to be, that could just, like, shamble its way around on the ground. It's like, yeah, that would suck to be turned into that thing, right? Okay? So the memories are still in there somewhere, and it might be possible that, who knows? I mean, I guess every homie might be different as well. Maybe some maintain their will or their memories more than others. I guess it's possible. So maybe there's like a slight remnant, and we do know it is possible, even for the homies that are created from Big Mom's own soul, her soul, that she's the user of the fruit, even those ones can still rebel and have their own opinions and thought processes of things. Big Mom does exert a certain level of control over them, but they can go and make their own decisions, right? So just like how Zeus decided to rebel against Big Mom and join Nami, maybe Nash originally, like, Big Mom ripped out the soul of Goldberg's father, threw it into Nash, the shield, and so maybe she tried to command it, and it worked for a little while, but maybe the giants were able to get the shield away, and the shield was like, you know, it's like, let's get out of here, I want to go back home and see my son, or maybe not remember his son, because it doesn't seem like that's the case. Goldberg might not even know if that is his father. It might not be, but, like, you know, looking at it now, I'm like, yeah, that does kind of make sense, you know? So it might be a situation like that, right? Well, anyway, he's like, I got to get back to Elbaf. That's my home. That's where my family is, or something, like, just like a strong connection with that. Nash also brought up in the chapter, wait a minute, you guys know Zeus? Zeus is the commander of all of the homies. He's like he's a big shot amongst them, you know, and all that stuff. So people brought up, it's like, well, if he was created by Mother Carmel, how would he know about Zeus? And you're right, like, it would make more sense if he was a homie that was created through Big Mom's soul power rather than Mother Caramel's, if he lived on Totland for a time, and therefore would know that Prometheus and Napoleon and Zeus are the leaders of the homies, essentially, right? And then Big Mom's there, you know, the one that bears her soul, okay? So it could be something like that, absolutely, right? It was also really funny when they said, oh yeah, Zeus is now working for our navigator as her lackey. And then, you know, Nash was just like, what? Huh? How does that work? You know, right? It's like, wait, do I get to meet him? So that would actually be really cool. I actually want to see that now. I want to see Nash meeting with Zeus. So Zeus pops out of the climate act and has a conversation with Nash and be like, oh, hey, that's cool. You're a homie created by the Soul Fruit, just like me. It's like, oh my God, Zeus, that's awesome. It's so cool that I get to meet you. It's like, yeah. So what's up, you know? And they just kind of talk, and then we learn a little bit about the backstory there a little bit, as much as Nash knows, because he might not have the memories, but he might like, oh yeah, I was created in Totland like 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago. Like, I don't know. I was like, oh, that's crazy. You know, I don't know. Maybe something like that, right? So the homies are able to rebel. They are able to have their own thought process. And once they get out of like range of Big Mom's control, because there seems to be a control over that. Like if Nash were to get close enough to Big Mom might be able to like exert direct control over that power, over Nash and stuff. Same thing with Zeus, but now they're islands away from Big Mom now, so they can kind of just have their own agency. And that's the way it's been. So I think we're going to learn a little bit more about Nash as we go. But so far, I like that idea. I like the idea that he was created with the soul of Goldberg's father, because we don't know if Goldberg's father is still alive or if he's dead, or this could have happened a long time ago. And from Goldberg's perspective, it could just be like, oh yeah, my dad died a while ago fighting Big Mom, and this is his lucky shield, and it can talk. Okay, and then Goldberg, I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff in Elbaf. There's a lot of weird stuff in the world in general, devil fruits and everything like that. So Goldberg is just like, yeah, okay, I guess that's a talking shield. I have a talking shield. That's neat. Cool. Somebody to talk to, if nothing else, right? So there you go, right? Apparently the shield can also, like, manipulate its size and grow larger and everything. Some of the homies are able to exhibit abilities like that. Like, Napoleon is a hat that can turn into a sword. Not sure if Napoleon was originally a hat or originally a sword and how that worked, but it works that way. So I don't know. Maybe it depends on the power of the soul that... Oh, wait a minute. Oh, hold on a second here. Remember back when Vegapunk was talking about the Buccaneers, and he was mentioning that there were qualities of the Buccaneers beyond just being descendants of giants. And in fact, Vegapunk was actually thinking that the reason that Kuma was able to maintain his, not maintain his humanity or his will exactly, because he's still very clearly a robot. He can't talk or anything like that, but the instinct to protect Bonnie was still very strong, and no matter what Vegapunk did, even the self-destruct protocol couldn't remove that entirely. So what if Vegapunk was going to say something like, oh, the Buccaneers, there's something about their soul. You know, it's not about the body. It's not about the physical brain or the mind or anything like that Vegapunk can mess with technology. And like brain dead, there's something else involving the soul of a giant or the soul of a buccaneer who are related to giants that maintain that power, that maintain that individuality. Do we know of any other homies that were created with the soul of a giant? Now, granted, we don't even know that Nash was created with the soul of a giant. We don't know that either, but it's an idea. So, maybe if a homie is created with a giant soul, because of just their willpower, they can, like, because we can see Nash changing size and exhibiting abilities that not all the homies were capable of doing. Big Mom's were, but they were created with Big Mom's soul, which you would argue, since she's the user of the fruit, her homies that she creates are a little bit stronger than your average ones, like, right? I don't know, maybe. It's an idea. But yeah, let me know down below what you think. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching signing out, along with Barry, Nash, and Barry's dad. Bye, Barry's dad.